My parents did an incredible job of helping me build healthy associations with money. It wasn't just about learning numbers, it was about understanding how balance and intentionality shaped our financial lives. Those early lessons set me up for success and helped me navigate the real world with more confidence when it came to money. And it's a big reason why I'm so excited to share today's sponsor with you, Acorns Early. Acorns Early is a smart money app and a debit card for kids that helps them learn the value of money. Kids can spend what they earn with their very own debit card. They'll love the new sense of independence and getting to choose from 35 plus customizable card designs. Plus, parents can keep track of where and when their kids are spending. You can get real-time spend notifications, set your kids' spending limits, and instantly block lost or stolen cards. They might not realize it now, but starting to invest early is going to have a huge impact on their financial future. And the best part? It's simple. And Acorns Early is such a smart, accessible tool to do that. If you're looking for a way to make a real difference in the financial future of the younger people in your life, Acorns Early is an amazing place to start. Ready to help your kids learn the value of money? Just head to acornsearly.com/diaries or download the Acorns Early app to get started. Sign up now and your first month is on us. T&Cs apply. Monthly subscription fee starting from $5 per month unless canceled.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
This episode is brought to you by Temptations Cat Treats. Your cat will come running for the perfectly irresistible Temptations Creamy Puree and Temptations Lickable Spoon Cat Treats. The best time to feed lickable cat treats to your cat is anytime. Feed by hand for a playful moment, in a bowl for a creamy treat, or as a topper to make mealtime fun. Visit temptationstreats.com to learn more.
Welcome to the Murder Diaries. I'm Natalie.
And I'm Paige. If you want to listen to this episode ad-free, head over to patreon.com/themurderdiariespod. For $2.99 a month, you can get early access and listen ad-free.
To Eric Velasquez, family was everything. The second of 4 boys, Eric looked up to his older brother and absolutely adored his younger ones. He wasn't just a brother. He was a protector, a role model, a constant presence. Even as a teenager in his late teens and early 20s, Eric wasn't chasing the usual things. He wasn't out spending his paycheck on himself. He was treating his family out to dinner, making memories, showing love in that quiet, thoughtful way that mattered the most. And when life threw him a curveball and he had to step away from college to help out at home, Eric didn't complain. He adjusted. He moved back in with his parents, found a job that fit around their needs, and kept showing up. For his family, for his responsibilities, for the future that he was still building. And it was that family he was returning home to the night he was gunned down in cold blood, outside an apartment building in March of 1994. Eric never made it home. And decades later, his family is still searching for answers, haunted by the silence, by the injustice, by everything Eric could have been. This is his story.
Used to think it's in my head, but I'm walking with the dead.
Eric Edward Velasquez was born on September 27, 1972, in the small mining town of Trinidad, Colorado, tucked near the New Mexico border. It's the kind of place where the mountains stretch wide, the community runs deep, and families often stay close. Eric was the second son born to Susan Ventura, just 3 years apart from his older brother, who he shared a special bond with. They weren't just siblings, they were best friends. Eric confided in his brother, leaned on him, and the two of them grew up side by side in every sense of the word. When Susan later remarried and had 2 more boys, Eric embraced his role as an older brother with open arms. Despite the 11-year age gap between Eric and his next youngest sibling, he never distanced himself. In fact, he stepped up. Susan remembers how both Eric and his older brother were always willing to help out around the house, cooking, cleaning, even helping their little brothers with homework. Eric was more than just helpful. He was a teacher, a role model. Whether it was showing his younger brothers how to cook or bake, or just being there when they needed someone to look up to, Eric was that steady, dependable presence. Over the past year, I've had the privilege of getting to know Susan. We've exchanged emails, spent a few hours on the phone, and she sat down for an exclusive interview for this episode. Her strength, her grace, and her deep love for Eric are palpable in every word she shares. Here's one of her favorite memories from Eric's early childhood. He was just 4 years old at the time.
When he was younger, he had web fingers on both hands. He would always like to show his fingers off to people. You know, look what I have in wave and just whatever. He'd love to do that. So when he had the surgery, he tells me, "Mom, look, I could open my hands and wave to everybody really high." And everybody laughed because it's something that he had little scars on it, but he was so proud of his fingers being open. And I just could remember that clearly. I can't say the age, but I could remember him. He was just so proud of his fingers, of all things.
I love that story because it just shows his desire for human connection, that ability to wave to people and connect with them and say hello.
Yes, he was so friendly. I mean, he was just outgoing.
Eric wasn't just a good kid. He was one of the greats. From an early age, he radiated kindness. Sweet, curious, and full of heart, Eric had that rare spark that made people stop and take notice. He taught himself how to ride a bike, and later how to surf. No lessons, just determination and a thirst for life. Eric loved to read, and when he wasn't lost in a book, he was creating art, drawing, painting, pouring his emotions onto the page with a quiet intensity. He was talented in so many ways it's hard to know where to begin. In elementary school, Eric played the flute in the school band, ran track, played baseball, and still somehow found time to be an outstanding student, winning awards in science, English, and math. He was always pushing himself to do more, to be more. By high school, that drive hadn't let up. Eric continued to excel. His senior year, he made the honor roll twice and was recognized with the prestigious Bank of America Award for his artwork. He even played on the high school football team. Truly, Eric was a rare kind of all-rounder, brilliant, creative, athletic, and kind. Eric was hardworking from a young age, always chasing his goals with quiet determination. One of his first jobs was at Jenny Craig, a choice that wasn't random. It aligned perfectly with his passion for health and fitness. He cared about helping people feel good in their own skin, just as much as he cared about his own wellness. His mother, Susan, remembers that time well, how proud he was to be earning his own money, and how seriously he took his responsibilities. Here she is sharing a memory that speaks to the kind of young man Eric was becoming.
First of all, he was an amazing son. He was very caring, very grateful. I'm just so proud of raising him because he was just strong and was just the kindest boy. He was just the strongest, independent, just the kindest boy you would know. I mean, I was just so proud to say that he was my son whenever he had his academics, and he was so proud of accomplishing his goal on getting to be a go-getter. I mean, he was just a one-of-a-kind son, I have to say. He was always a positive person. He's just positive in everything that he's done. And I was just, like I said, I'm just so proud of him. He liked to spend his time cycling. He bought a bicycle, and that's how he would go back and forth to his part-time job at Jenny Craig. But then he started competing, going into long-distance bicycling. So that was his goal. He loved bicycling. And of course, he loved arts. His dad was an artist, not a famous artist, but he was an artist. So he took that talent after his father. He was a good painter. He was a good drawer as well. I remember him helping doing the projects with the younger boys. and drawing for them. And I told them, you can't do that because they're only in fourth grade. They know they're not going to, I mean, fifth grade, they know they're not going to, when they were younger, I should say fifth grade, but then when they were younger, he would help them with their arts class project.
When Eric was a teen, his family moved from Colorado to California for his stepdad's job.
Eventually, the family relocated to California, moving in with Eric's uncle, his dad's brother, in El Monte. It was a big shift, but one the family made together, sticking close through every transition. After Eric wrapped up his middle school years, the family was able to buy a home of their own in La Puente, about 20 miles from where they'd been staying. It was a fresh chapter, and for Eric, it meant starting high school at La Puente High. There, he found his footing quickly. He joined the football team and almost instantly made an impression, not just for his talent, but for the way he moved on the field. He was quick, agile, almost slippery. So much so that his teammates started calling him Pretzel, a nickname that stuck. It's a detail Susan only recently learned. While reconnecting with one of Eric's old teammates, she heard the story for the first time. Decades later, she's still uncovering these little pieces of who Eric was. These joyful, unexpected moments that paint a fuller picture of her son.
I just reached out to his friend and asked him, because they called him Pretzel. And I asked his friend, why did they call him that name? And he says, because nobody could ever catch him. And when they did, he would roll over for them to not catch him. And he would be turning into a pretzel. So they called him Pretzel. When he told me that, I was just, I couldn't believe it. But he was good. We went to all his games. Oh, my goodness. I was such a proud mother. Because his name was always called. And when he would make a touchdown, he would jump down. He would look at me. He would look at us in the stands waving. He would always wave.
Eric wasn't just another kid on the team. He was something of a football star. His coaches saw real promise in him, the kind of raw talent that could take him far. On the field, he was focused, fast, and fearless. But Eric wasn't just chasing glory, he was thinking long-term. He believed he had what it took to play college ball, maybe even make a name for himself. But he also knew that talent alone wasn't enough. He was determined to keep his academics strong, to make sure nothing, not even football, got in the way of his education. It was classic Eric, driven, grounded, and always looking at the bigger picture.
He kept saying, I'm going to be a star, because he was very good at it, and his coaches wanted him to, but he wanted to get his general ed out of the way. And he mentioned, if I can't do my studying, if football's going to interfere with the studying, he won't do the football. So that's why he was going to look into that. And he was just about going to do that before he got killed. He would have been something, let me tell you.
And although he dreamed of playing college ball, he never wanted it to be his career. It was a hobby he loved, and he was very good at it, but he didn't want it to be his whole life.
He didn't really concentrate on being a pro. That, I don't think we've ever talked about that. To him, that was just like a sport to do to keep his body healthy. He was always making sure that, I think that's why he joined Jenny Craig, because he always tells me, Mom, don't eat that. Here, I got you some food. So I would be on Jenny Craig food for a long time.
Once Eric graduated from high school, he moved to the coastal city of Santa Barbara, where he could surf to his heart's content. Eric also enrolled in some courses at Santa Barbara City College. While some reporting states that he attended University of California, Santa Barbara, better known as UCSB, Susan assures us that is incorrect. He continued to work for Jenny Craig and transferred to their Goleta branch, which is near Santa Barbara.
As I've mentioned, Eric was hardworking. He wanted to always have a way to earn his own money, and he saw his money as a way to bring happiness and togetherness to his family.
His favorite food was Mexican food. When he got paid, he did like to take us out to dinner. He wanted to spend his money on going out to dinner and taking his brothers and sometimes, the whole family. But he would, on payday, take his brothers out to have Mexican food. He wasn't greedy with his money. He would always say, I'm going to get that money again. I'll have more money. because the boys would tell him, don't spend your money on taking us out to eat. But that's what he liked to do.
During his second semester, Eric's family fell in hard times, and as a result, they were unable to continue helping him pay for his tuition. So Eric moved back in with his parents and brothers, who had recently moved to Ventura, California. He wanted to go back to college once things were more financially stable, and thought he might enroll at Ventura College to complete his general education, and while there, maybe join the football team. Once he received his community college education, he wanted to pursue a business degree with the hopes of doing something with his artistic and creative talents.
But no, he was more or less wanted to do a career. I was talking to Alicia. She said he wanted to get the general out of the way, but really didn't have a career in mind. Not like no pro football. He was more or less wanted to get his degree in business. And I think it was art, she told me. It was the art.
After the move, Eric didn't waste any time stepping up. He picked up a part-time job as a door-to-door salesman, selling subscriptions to the Times. It wasn't glamorous work, but Eric approached it the same way he approached everything, with a determination and a smile that made people want to say yes. And even with the demands of work, he never stopped being there for his family. He continued helping out with his younger brothers, whether it was homework, dinner, or just being present. That was Eric. Always doing what needed to be done without ever making a fuss.
He did like the job because he thought it was easy and it was good pay. It was like a part-time job where he could do his own schedule so that way he would be home.
And it shouldn't be a surprise that Eric excelled in this job, just like he excelled at most everything he tried. He was in the top 2 salespeople in his office, often winning the top salesman award. And because he was so good at the job and made so many sales, he didn't need to increase his hours past part-time. Eric's uncle Andre said, "He could sell you the shoes off your feet."
The job had a flexible schedule, and Eric chose to work Monday to Friday, 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. These hours allowed him to be around during the day if his brothers needed anything or were off of school, and he could spend the weekends driving to La Puente to see his high school girlfriend.
Alicia and Eric met in high school and started dating. Alicia was a grade below, so she was in her final year of high school when Eric went to college. But Eric did his best to drive to see her as often as he could. Eric and Alicia were both athletic, with Alicia being on the drill team while, as we know, Eric was on the football team. They were both goal-oriented and focused, and their relationship was said to be strong and supportive. Eric and Alicia weren't just a couple. They were a partnership, one that brought 2 families together in the most beautiful way. Alicia's family loved Eric, and Eric's family absolutely adored Alicia. After raising 4 boys, Susan welcomed the presence of another young woman in the house, someone she could bond with, laugh with. And Eric's younger brothers, well, they were smitten. To them, Alicia wasn't just Eric's girlfriend. She was the sister they'd always wished for. Kind, patient, always willing to play or help out or even just hang out and talk. And it worked both ways. Alicia had never had younger siblings, and she embraced her role in Eric's household with so much warmth. The couple spent time in both households because they only lived 5 blocks apart, back when Eric's family was still in La Puente. It was as if the 2 families had started to blend, even before anyone said it out loud.
She would come over. She was a very kind, still is a very kind, very good woman. Very good woman. Now I could say she's a woman. But they dated and they went to places with us, and we accepted her as a daughter because we didn't have no girls. And that was like the first girl in our family. And the 2 younger boys, they adored her. They just adored her and wanted to sit by her. And Eric says, don't get, you sit by her, but don't get too close. She won't come back. And I remember she would say, no, I love, because she didn't have no younger brothers. She goes, no, I want them. They're okay. They're okay with me. So they would take the younger boys out for ice cream. And she was just a very caring person. And Eric just made sure that she was always comfortable around the family and eating. And yeah, they were just a great couple, even in school. I mean, the people, their friends, they all knew that they were just the right couple for each other.
In one of my conversations with Susan, she relayed how grateful she is that despite 30 years since Eric's death, she still has a strong relationship with Alicia. In fact, it's through Alicia that Susan is still learning new things about her son.
She has more memories, I have to say, than I do that I didn't know of because that was their life.
One thing that you did mention before we started recording too was something you didn't know until you were talking with her in preparation for the interview, was the direction that their relationship was headed to.
I was excited when I heard, when she told me when they got out of high school and he started college, he had talked to her about changing schools because of, the finances, and then I needed him. And so they talked about it more. And so she told me when he moved back to Ventura that he went down one weekend and he asked her to marry him. And she said, well, as soon as our college and we get our general ed out of the way, we'll do it. He goes, I'll wait for you whenever you want. And as soon as we finish our general ed, we would do that, but we won't have any children until we finish our college. And that was it. And so she told me that, and that was something that I didn't even know. I heard it this morning because, like I said, we were talking about the interview, and I wanted to make things clear about the college. And then I told her, do you want to share anything that you may have? How many years were you dating him? And she goes, well, I'm going to tell you something. And that's when she told me that they were planning on doing their marriage.
This new information gave Susan a moment of happiness, thinking about the amazing husband and father Eric would have been, and how Alicia would have been the perfect daughter-in-law. Although Eric was well-liked in both his personal and professional life, he did have a run-in with some people before he was murdered. According to a statement from Alicia, this happened around 6 months before Eric was killed. Eric confided in his older brother and told him that another man had pointed a gun at him. Some reporting says it was after he gave the man's girlfriend a ride home. A statement from Alicia says it happened because the man thought Eric was tailgating him. But regardless of the cause, the man became angry and threatened Eric.
He knew about Eric and this guy pulling a gun on Eric because Eric told him about the story, but they kept it from me. Eric told him that if I tell you something, you promise you don't tell Mom, because I don't want Mom to worry.
This incident happened in Oxnard, a city in Ventura County.
The following information is what we understand to the best of our knowledge. This is conflicting information, a confusing timeline, and not a lot of clarity offered from the people who were there and could help smooth out some details. But we're going to try our best to keep things as easy to follow as possible. On the weekend of March 6th and 7th, 1994, Eric visited Alicia and accompanied her to a family event in La Puente. On the evening of the 7th, the Sunday, Eric said goodbye to Alicia and headed back home. Eric gave two men, Raymond and Richard, a ride to Raymond's apartment. Eric needed to make a stop first at his brother's place.
After visiting the friends in La Puente that weekend, he was driving back home from La Puente that's where he visited Alicia that weekend for her family gathering. But on that Sunday night, when Eric was taking his two friends back home here in Ventura County, that night he stopped at his brother's house because he had bought some shoes for that would be his goddaughter. He baptized her. And he was so proud he wanted to bring some shoes to her. So he gave her the shoes. He visited his brother in the same town in Santa Paula.
The second stop the car made wasn't planned, and it was in Santa Paula. Eric recognized the car of the man who had threatened him with the gun 6 months earlier. He stopped the car and one of his friends got out and smashed the car's window. As they left and headed to Raymond's apartment, police responded to the vandalism call and issued a radio alert for Eric's car. Officers later escorted individuals from the apartment complex where Eric got into an argument with a man described as being chunky.
After that, him and Raymond, the guy he was going to that last seen him, were driving to take Raymond home. But for some unknown reason, only Raymond knows this, why they stopped at this house where they spotted a car that they had vandalized the car, or he remembers the car for some unknown reason. And Raymond got out and broke the window of that car. Eric was in his car. He was the driver. And so Raymond got back in. I guess the people came out and seen the white car leave. So when Eric and Raymond left that home, on the way to the apartment building, he was stopped by one of the officers. Now, I don't know if it was a CHP officer or if it was a police officer. And I don't know what happened with that incident there. Apparently, they let him go and he went to the apartment. But when he got to the apartment, the police, where that house was broken, they had called 911 to tell him about the vandalism. Well, the police officer went to that house, talked to him, got the people that lived in that house, put them in the police car, and drove them where Eric and Raymond were. Before he got into the house, the guy jumped out of the police car and was arguing with Eric. Eric told him, well, you're the guy that pulled the gun out on me in Oxnard. And this was prior to this incident. And so they were arguing and somebody broke them up. And when they broke up, they said they shook hands.
I'm assuming the officer was still on scene when that was happening.
Yes, he was still on scene. Actually, they said the officer parked on the street, staying there for about 30 minutes to make sure everything was okay.
At some point after they got to the apartments at 720 Ojai Road, Raymond's brother-in-law, Ben, joined the group.
There's this other person that keeps coming up in my research, and that person's Ben P. Is he the second friend that was riding with Eric and Raymond in the car from La Puente to Ventura?
No.
He was just in Ventura around the area at the time?
No. So the person that was with Eric and Raymond, his name is Richard, but Richard passed away in a car accident years after that. His friend Ben was Raymond's brother-in-law. I didn't know at the time. Ben lived up the street, and that was Eric's friend. I could say Ben was his friend.
Now, after the incident was sorted out by the police, Eric and Raymond went into Raymond's apartment. And the Oxnard incident car window man went into another apartment in the complex because he just so happened to know someone who lived there. Eric and Raymond hung out in the apartment for a bit, and then Eric headed back to his car to go home. And according to Susan, the police officer claimed to have stayed parked outside for 30 minutes in order to ensure nothing else happened. But the officer wasn't there when Eric left his friend's apartment just after midnight and headed to his car.
He said he did, but there's no record showing that actually a cop was out there because he didn't stay that long into Raymond's house. And he didn't stay 30 minutes in Raymond's house. But the police officer said he was parked outside. But he stood there, he said 30 minutes and then left. And then that's when Eric came out and that's when it happened.
Unbeknownst to Eric, someone was lying in wait for him, and the police think it was one of the men from the earlier altercation who had stayed behind. As Eric approached his car, a single gunshot rang out, and Eric fell to the ground. The bullet had hit him in the chest, and 21-year-old Eric Velasquez died at the scene.
He was gunned down when he got to the car. And if I'm not mistaken, the way they were saying it is it went through his shoulder and then it hit something and ricocheted went through his lungs, and that he was lying there for about 45 minutes.
Bino Barreto, a resident living in the apartment closest to the parking lot, heard a weird noise around midnight, so he went out to investigate. He was wondering if someone had accidentally hit his car, so he was shocked to find Eric laying on the ground covered in blood. Bino later told reporters that the area was usually peaceful. As for Eric's friend Raymond, well, he says he was asleep and didn't hear a gunshot. When other residents were later questioned, they all said they had no idea it had happened until the police came knocking on their doors. Luckily, Bino had heard something and went to investigate. And a witness, this is unclear if it was Bino or another resident, was able to give a description of the murderer to the police.
The witness reported hearing what sounded like a M80 firecracker about 11:30. One witness immediately looked out his front window and saw what was described as a male Hispanic, 5'6" to 130 pounds to 150 pounds, wearing a white t-shirt and blue work pants, running from the carport area and getting into the passenger side of a dark blue or brown Chevy Blazer. And that was parked on the street directly in front of the 720 Ojai Road under a street lamp.
Immediately, the police began interviewing apartment residents, who were considered potential witnesses. And then they informed Eric's family about the tragedy that had occurred. However, they didn't speak to Susan. Instead, they informed Eric's older brother, who then called Susan on his own. And after that phone call with Susan's oldest son, a few minutes had passed before Raymond and Ben showed up at Susan's house to also relay the news.
And this is something that we talked about when we spoke on the phone back in August, is why did Ben and Raymond inform you and the family versus police about what happened?
Never got an answer from them. They did go to my son's house in Santa Paula and tell him, but they didn't contact us at all.
Do you know why they went to your older son's house? Was Eric staying with his brother at the time, or is it because he had just dropped off the shoes, spent a couple, some time there before he left?
I don't know why the police officers even knew that lived there, hadn't lived there very long.
Is your older son?
Yes, is Eric's brother. And we don't know how they knew lived there, unless Raymond told them. That's the only thing.
Raymond's sister, who was just 18 at the time, was able to fill in a few details about that night, as she was staying with Raymond the night of the shooting. She said that Eric and Raymond had been at the apartment, and she had seen them arguing with a friend of a man who lives in the complex before coming inside. She said that Eric accused the man of threatening him with a gun previously, but the man denied it was him. Eric and the man then shook hands, which is what Susan told us happened too. But surely if their suspect was a man who was involved in an earlier altercation where there was a police presence, there would be a report filed and details would be easily accessible. But apparently not.
It's interesting to me that the officer who was, I don't want to say involved, but present, never filed any type of report about it.
I tried to get a report about it. I don't know. I tried to look and I didn't see anything. There should be a report of the vandalism, and there should be a report. Well, there might be on the police report. I can't get it. They won't give me any information. But yeah, there has to be something on what happened. Even the officer that stopped him, there should be something.
Despite there not being a report, Susan says that the police have the names of 4 suspects who they believe were responsible for Eric's murder.
You have suspect names?
Yeah, they have suspects' names, they said.
But those aren't names that you have access to.
Yeah, I have the names that they have suspects that they told me who they thought they were, but I don't know if they ever been interviewed. I really don't know. Mm-hmm. But they did throw out some names to me, but I don't know how true they are. I don't know if they're investigated or not. They just say a chunky guy. We believe, based on the information obtained through the investigation, that there may have been a total of 4 suspects involved in the murder of Eric.
The police may have suspect names, but no arrests have ever been made.
Do you feel safe when you're investigating this?
I have to be careful.
Yeah.
Desperate for answers, Susan raised $1,000 as a reward for anyone who could provide information that led to an arrest. It wasn't much, but it was all she had. A letter to the governor years later led to an additional $50,000 being added to the reward fund in the hopes that someone would come forward. Under California law enforcement agencies can ask the governor to assign money to a reward fund if all investigative leads have been exhausted and there's a need to encourage people to come forward with more information.
Susan is concerned about the myriad of inaccuracies that have been reported by the media, such as the events that led up to the killing. These same inaccuracies were even included in the letter to the governor asking for money for a reward. Now you might be thinking, okay, a few mistakes can happen when writing about a 30-year-old case, especially if the person writing is new to the investigation. But the person who wrote the letter to the governor was the first investigator that took Eric's case. They had personally worked on it decades earlier. Eric's death left a hole that can never truly be filled. There's an empty seat at family dinners now, a quiet absence during holidays, birthdays, and everyday moments that should have been shared. The kind of ache that lingers, not just because he's gone, but because of everything he never got the chance to become. His dreams, his plans, the life he was building. All of it stolen in an instant. Susan has held on to hope for decades. Hope that someone somewhere saw something, that someone will come forward. She knows that to bring justice for Eric, it's going to take a confession or a witness brave enough to speak up. Because after all these years, the truth is still out there.
So I guess what we're hoping for is a confession of some sort.
Yes, a confession. That's why I'm trying to bring out the 50,000. Just say something. Your mothers must know. Somebody knows something. They have to know something. That was a little small apartment. The doors were door to door.
At the time of this recording, Eric's case is open but inactive. Additional ballistics testing was requested for the bullet. However, nearly a year has passed since the bullet was sent away, and nothing has been communicated to Susan about the progress or results.
All I know is they're keeping it open. Nobody is working on it because they don't have the manpower. There's only one investigator. And like I said, I just met with him, and I'm going to find out what happened to the lab results that back in April were sent. I never heard about that. He told me that they're backlogged and he haven't heard from them. So that, and then the bullet casing they sent out to the lab in a bandana. So they're waiting for that. But they said there's really nothing more going on with the case. And they cannot interview any of the witnesses because they don't have enough manpower.
Susan is advocating for the sheriff's department or a cold case unit to take over, in the hopes that transferring the case to a new jurisdiction will mean fresh eyes on the files, and hopefully some manpower can be assigned.
I've asked Santa Paula to open the case and have somebody look at it and to question everybody. And they don't have the manpower to do it. I just asked the detective, and I have it on recording because he said I could record him. He said, I said, have you went back and asked the witnesses or talked to them? He says, no, we don't have the manpower to do that. I haven't. I said, then what did you do? You just opened and looked at the file and read it and that's it? I mean, that's not trying to find out what happened here. I do have a meeting with the city council member. His name is Carlos. He was the detective in 94 with Ismail. Both of them worked on the case. He has been helping me. And so I'm going to meet with him because I want answers as why isn't this lab work returned? What exactly happened in this case? And why can't it be transferred to another jurisdiction, to the sheriff's department or Ventura sheriffs or to the cold case unit? Why are we keeping it in Santa Paula?
March 7th, 2025 marked 30 years since Eric's senseless murder. and his family are no closer to getting the closure they need. They remember their kind and generous son and brother, and wish he was still around to share in the joys of life with them. Even in death, Eric was generous, and his organ donation helped 2 people regain their sight thanks to corneal transplants. So now it's up to us. Susan needs our help to spread the word about Eric's case.
What I need is the public's help to share what I have put out there on his flyers for his $50,000 reward and share it, across the country to other states, because we know that they could be in Arizona, Las Vegas, and Oregon, around California. They didn't move far. And if everybody could just share his $50,000 reward and ask, as you're sharing, to let them know that I've been doing this for 30 years and somebody out there knows what happened and they could receive this reward. And just help me, like I said, by sharing Eric's story everywhere that they possibly can.
The governor of California announced in 2022 that any information leading to the arrest and conviction in Eric's case, as well as 3 other unsolved murders, would be eligible for a $50,000 reward. The victim's family has also offered a $1,000 reward, and additional rewards are offered by Crime Stoppers and We Tip. Anyone with information on the unsolved murder of Eric Velasquez is asked to call Santa Paula Police Detective S. Virani at 805-525-4474 or Ventura County Crime Stoppers at 800-222-TIPS. That's 800-222-8477.
Make sure to follow us on all of our socials at The Murder Diaries Pod. And until then,
Stay safe.
bye.